Dootrix have been working with Heathrow for a number of years now, since about 2016. And in that time, we've seen a huge amount of change. We've seen a wholesale shift towards the cloud. We've seen huge advances in terms of data and AI. And we've also seen how Heathrow have adapted their engagement model to make sure Europe's busiest airport always stays one step ahead. I'm delighted that Andy Eisenman, who's the head of cloud and data at Heathrow, has joined me to talk about their journey and explore some of the challenges when operating at airport levels of scale. So when we talk to some of our clients about the way we work with Heathrow, we always hold the Heathrow model up as an example of how organisations and suppliers can work really effectively together. I know you've put a lot of effort into building that partner ecosystem, so I'd like to spend some time exploring with you how it's evolved. So I guess, firstly then, what was the catalyst for doing something different in terms of supplier engagement? What were some of the problems you felt needed to be addressed?
I suppose it goes back to the seismic change that was mobile and smartphones entering the enterprise. And at that point, we realised that we needed to work with companies that had very specific skills around development, and that the quality of the development that was being done was going to be key to our success. We found that we needed to find a new partner network in order to be able to find the quality of the software development. But we also recognised that those partners would need to come on a journey with us and understand how we worked as an enterprise. So it was really about understanding how we could find the talent that was being able to deliver what we needed to deliver as technology development accelerated, but also find partners that could work with us in an enterprise environment.
What was the journey that you went on to create a more mature ecosystem?
We reached out to people that we knew in the wider technology ecosystem, and we started to ask the question, well, who do you know and what sort of people do you think are already delivering in that space? And this is where Dootrix name came up very, very quickly. We were introduced, if you remember, through a mutual partner who was supplying services into both of us. And by first of all making sure that we acknowledged that we didn't know everything about everything in this particular space, but could identify people who could act as introducers. That's how we sort of reached out into markets that were sort of completely alien to us in terms of partners that we were looking to use. And we found that very successful, and it was through a mutual partnership that Dootrix and Heathrow came together.
So as you moved into mobile and then again into cloud, you started to rethink the way that you engage with your suppliers and you got them to work effectively together. Yeah. But you did manage to build an ecosystem of partners that are all working for Heathrow and by and large work very well with each other. How did you do that, and what benefits have you seen from that?
So I think there are probably two components to that. First of all is Heathrow's values. Heathrow has a set of values, and probably the most important one to me is working together. So we've got to enter into relationships where they are true partnerships, that you are working together, that you can have conversations that are candid, that you celebrate successes, that you talk about challenges openly and honestly and get them addressed quickly. I think from a personal level, one of my personal values is trust. And so I'm always looking for partners that we can build a trusting relationship with, that we're having conversations, that those conversations are honest and we know exactly where we are in a relationship. And the partners that have been successful in our ecosystem have been the partners that have been able to exhibit both the corporate value of working together and align to my personal value as a leader in building trusting relationships.
Did you find any, were there any challenges along the way with that? Were there any suppliers that found that difficult to go on that journey, or?
Yeah, I think there's an element of corporate ego, I think. So I think if a partner comes into a room with an ego or with a concern about not always being right, or feel the need to always be right, then that's always a challenging relationship with a partner. I think with Dootrix we found a huge amount of confidence in terms of where your abilities are, but also came with a huge amount of humility and a desire to learn about, well, how do we apply our skills in an environment that might not necessarily be particularly familiar to us. So where there's a component of learning and a component of understanding that we're going to improve every day, then typically the partnerships work a lot better than and then they do if those components are not there within the organisation.
Yeah, I know that you spent a lot of time personally working with those partners and bringing them on side and getting them talking and working together. But this was a kind of a shift left for you. So if you had to go on that journey again, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges working in a large organisation is the governance that's needed in order for us to work within a regulated environment and to show value to our partners, to our shareholders, to our passengers. And I think had I had my time again, I think I would have lent into the governance a little bit more. I think my theory has always been minimal viable governance. So what do we need to do in order to drive the value for the business? I think had I had my time again, I think we probably needed to lean into that governance process a little quicker than we did, because it ramped up very, very quickly after COVID. And a lot of the conversations that we're having now is how do we work with these partners in a much more governed setting as we go on to the next few years of our journey.
Thank you. And finally, if another organisation wanted to go down a similar route, what do they need to have in place to ensure the right kind of outcomes, do you think?
I think you need to have a really strong understanding of your own corporate personality as the business that's coming into this. Are you risk adverse? Are you a risk-taking organisation? Do you understand your governance processes? Do you really understand that corporate personality and the values of your organisation? I think you also then need to look at what you're trying to achieve from a partner. What does that partner bring in terms of the additional skills you're looking for? And then the important thing is to then understand the gap between the two. And that's where the work is. The work, I think, as a leader is how do you bridge that gap? How do you bring those two worlds together? How do you join the dots in between? I think an acceptance that it won't always be right and you won't get things right is important, and that you've got to build a relationship that allows you to have candid conversations. And those candid conversations have to happen in both directions. You need to create an environment where your partner can be candid with you as well and give you that feedback. But in summary, it's all about understanding the two organisations, understanding the gap between the two organisations, and make sure that the leadership on either side are working on closing that gap. And that's where, for me, a partnership comes from.